Thank you, Clayton, and hello to everyone. It's great to be able to be on this call with you. I'm always a little embarrassed by these introductions because they always sound a lot better than they really are. I mean, the bottom line is, as you can see, I'm losing my hair. So I've just lived a very normal, stressful life like everybody else. In fact, those of you who I know that I can see right now, you all look like you haven't changed a bit in the last 3 years. You should have been with me, living in the Philippines, supervising 200 teenagers for the last 3 years, and you would have lost your hair too. Anyway, the bottom line is I've learned some things over the last few years that I think will be helpful to all of us as we continue our journey in building something for ourselves so that we're not subject to the ups and downs of an increasingly unpredictable world. Now, before I sort of jump into what I want to talk about this afternoon, this evening, I want to just take a minute or two and express my gratitude for all of you and for all of the people who have done so much to make this company become the success that it is, in spite of the fact that I wasn't here to do any work to help you. I'm grateful for your loyalty. I'm grateful for your talent and your intelligence. I'm grateful for the spirit that you bring to what you do, the desire you have to help other people, to be the kind of person that really does make a difference in the world to the people you love and to the people you don't even know. It matters to me. I had a young man in my office earlier today, one of my young missionaries who served with me in the Philippines for a couple of years. And one of the questions he had, he's full of ambition and excitement about the future. And he says, what is it that allows you to know when you're making the right decision about a business decision or an investment? And I thought very carefully about this. And I said, you know when you've made the right decision when you've done it for the right reason. And that's never for the money. And he said, what? He says, because you're in it for the money. I says, that's the reason most people make bad decisions, is they make decisions based on the money instead of based upon doing what is the right thing. If you focus on trying to do the right thing, you won't always get it right. I certainly haven't always gotten it right. But when I've really sat back and thought about what's the right thing here, yeah, I want to look at the financial upside and downside. I want to look at the risk. I want to look at how much work it's going to take. I want to look at all those things. But in the end, in the final analysis, you've got to make a decision about what's right, what's the best thing I can do for the people around whom I'm going to be living and serving with. And when you look at it from that perspective, you'll always make the right decision. Maybe it'll be a financial success. Maybe it'll be so-so. But you will always feel good about yourself. You'll always feel good about who you are. And in the end, that's more valuable to you than money. So I wanted to say that, and again, express my gratitude to all of you. I've been making calls randomly around the world and talking to people, really enjoying surprising people and giving them the opportunity to just share their perspective about the company, about what's happened in the last 3 years. I've been getting these photographs, these snapshots of what's been happening over the last 3 years, but all of you have been watching the movie. And so it's really helpful for me to get out there and to talk to people. And many of the people I've been talking to are not the big leaders. I want to talk to the young people in the business, the people who have been with us for 6 months or a couple of years. And in many cases, people I didn't even know before I had a chance to talk to them. And what I'm hearing, what I'm learning as I'm talking to them is that there is a big vision out there in a lot of people. I'll just share with you a couple of people who have really impacted me in these phone calls. There's a distributor in Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam. She's joined us just a couple of years ago, and she's got a PhD in something that I don't even understand, but she was not happy in that career. And so she signed up as a distributor, and she built a fairly successful business real quickly in about 6 months, and then it all fell apart. And she had to make a choice. What am I going to do? Am I going to learn from this experience and start over again, or am I just going to quit and go away? And she made the decision to learn from the experience and start over again. And now her business is, I guess it's getting close to about 3.5 million points a month. Can you believe that? I mean, it's staggering. I think the last person that did something like that was probably Todd Smith, right, Todd? So the reality is, as we look at this, we see that there is a way to do something that's beyond our natural sort of imagination. And I've thought a little bit about this, and it reminded me of an experience that I had that deeply impacted me. And that was when I met a man named Steve Zaffron. Now, most of you have never heard of that man before. He's maybe dead now. I guess I haven't had an interaction with him in probably a decade. But I sat down with him in his home down in Miami, Florida, about 25, 30 years ago. And he said to me, "Stewart, do you really want to be successful?" And I says, "I really do." And he says, "There's really 3 laws you need to understand about success, because success is a function of performance. And performance is a function of these 3 laws." Now, I want to share these with you, and then we'll discuss them and how they impact you and how they can change your life like they changed my life. The first law is a person's performance correlates with how a situation occurs to them. Now, I want to explain that because the language may be a little strange to you. What Steve was saying to me is that our performance correlates with or interacts with in a correlated manner, meaning it goes along with how a situation occurs to us. So we can look at a set of facts, and the way we see it determines how we perform. Now, think of this. Here we are in the middle of a global pandemic. It has rocked the world, but the rocking has not all been negative. For many of us, it's been negative. It's changed our lives in ways that we don't like. But for some, it's been incredibly positive. They probably don't want to admit that, but think about the owners of Zoom. Pandemic been good for them? I think so. How about the owners of Facebook? Pandemic been good for them? In fact, all social media platforms have fantastically prospered in the pandemic. So they see the pandemic quite differently from the steel worker who no longer has a job because the steel mill shut down. How the situation occurred to them, the set of facts were what the set of facts were, but the way we saw it determined how we performed. Now, the interesting thing about this is that the most important occurring is how we occur to ourselves. How do you see yourself? Because your performance in this most important variable is highly determined by how you see yourself. If you see yourself as someone who can do this, who is innovative, determined, disciplined, focused, able to learn, well, guess how you perform. If you see yourself as someone who is unable, not disciplined, weak, needy, always coming up short, and any of the other negative things that a person could say, well, your performance will be pretty much consistent with how you occur to yourself, how you see yourself. Now, I'm going to give you the second law that Steve taught me. Number 2, how a situation occurs to us is determined by language. How we talk to each other, but most importantly, how we talk to ourselves. And that's not just a verbal talking, but that always speaking voice in our head that's talking to us about who we are and what we've done. And so I'm sorry about that light. I've got the sunset going on right here in my ranch, and it's kind of coming in and changing the image. I apologize for that, but I hope you can still see. So as we look at that second law, that how a situation occurs to us arises in language, we begin to realize how important it is for us to be careful about the way we talk to ourselves and how we talk to others about a situation, because that alters the way it occurs to us. Right now in the United States and in other parts of the world, we see this dramatic contention, this violence in opinions, and sometimes spilling into physical violence between people who are deeply passionate about one way of seeing something and other people who are deeply passionate seeing the same set of facts, but very differently. The situation occurs to both sides or all three sides or however many sides there are very differently, and it's fueled by language. How we talk to each other about something literally changes the way we see it. Third law, and then we'll come back and we'll wind these three together and see how this can change you and how you perform in all aspects of your life that are important to you. An occurring is altered by generative or future-based language. Now, what does that mean? It means that we can begin to change the way something occurs to us by using language that is future-based or generative, meaning that it generates a new way of seeing something. Now, I'm going to give you an example of this that comes from a book that I read many years ago. Some of you may know the story of Andrew Carnegie. Andrew Carnegie was this penniless Scots boy who came to the United States back about 130 years ago. And he was very industrious, and he grew up and he ended up building steel mills, among other things. And he created a massive fortune. In fact, there are many libraries all over the United States that were funded by the Carnegie fortune. And Carnegie hired a brilliant man named Charlie Schwab to manage his steel mills. And the story is told, and it's been documented, that one day Charlie Schwab goes to visit his worst performing mill. So this steel mill was doing worse than all the other steel mills in the entire Carnegie empire. Schwab sits down with the mill manager and he says, "What are we doing to change your performance?" And the manager is a smart guy, a capable guy, but he has no hope. He's tried everything. He's tried the carrot, he's tried the stick, he's done everything he can to motivate these people to do better in their work, and nothing is bringing it about. Nothing is creating, let's get that sun out of my face, nothing is creating the change that needs to happen for the steel mill to even get into the middle of the pack. So Schwab listens to this manager explain his problems and all the different things that he's tried that never have worked. And then he says, "Well, let's walk out into the mill." And it's about closing time for the shift. The day shift is just about over. And Schwab walks up to one man that's packing up his clothes and things for the ending of the shift. And he says, "How many heats did you do today?" Now, I don't know what a heat really is, but apparently it's some measurement of how much steel is made in the course of the shift. And the man looked at him and he said, "We did 6. And Schwab said, "Thanks." And then he walked over, got a gigantic piece of chalk, went to the entrance of the mill and he wrote a big 6 in chalk on the floor at the entrance of the mill. And then he walked away, never said a word. Well, when the night shift came in, they saw the big 6 and they said, "What's up with this?" And the day shift, as they were leaving, they said, "Well, the big boss came in, asked us how many heats we did. We said 6. He wrote down 6 on the floor, and then he drove away." Well, the next morning when the day shift comes back in, the 6 is gone and an 8 has been written in chalk on the floor. Well, when the day shift ends and the night shift comes that next day, they see that the 8 is gone and now it's a 10 written there. With a single question and a single act of writing a number on the floor, Charles Schwab used future-based language to completely change how the steel mill workers saw their situation. It changed from a job they had to do to a competition with the night shift or the day shift. It became fun. They started to enjoy it, and their performance accelerated until they became one of the top mills in the Carnegie Empire. Now, I tell you that old story because I want you to understand that something is dramatically possible in your life, but not until the way you change the way you see yourself and the way you see the situation you're in. If you look at where we are right now in this pandemic, you see yourself a certain way, and that affects dramatically what you do in every hour of your working day. It affects the way you sleep. It affects the way you digest food. It affects the way you handle the ups and downs of your normal life. It affects the way you interact with your children. Simply put, if you want to change your outcome a little bit, well, you can change your attitude. You can pump yourself up. If you want to change your outcome a little more, you can change your behavior. But if you want to radically change the situation of your life, you have to change the way you see the situation in your life, which means you have to begin to speak differently about the situation in your life. When I was asked by my church to go spend 3 years in a volunteer assignment in the Philippines, I wasn't very excited about it. I was willing to serve, but I wasn't happy about it. My life was really, really good. I was really enjoying what I was doing. I love Unicity. I love working in Unicity. And I didn't really want to go spend 3 years supervising a couple of hundred teenagers. I knew it was important in some ways, but I felt like there were many people that could do it that I didn't need to. But ultimately, I made the decision to do it. There, for the first few months, quite frankly, the way the situation occurred to me was not positive. I was resentful that I was there. I'm embarrassed to tell you this, but I want to make a point. I want to make a point that you will understand so it deeply impacts you. So the first few months that I'm there, I'm resenting being there. Every day is drudgery to me. Meeting with these young missionaries is like, oh man, I could be meeting with, the people I love to hang out with, the distributors. I could be, here I am talking with a 19-year-old and, I got 8 children. I get it with children, but, they're not that exciting. And so the reality for me was I was resenting it, and it was just hard. Every day seemed to last for 70 hours. And then at night, I'd go to bed and I'd be like, this hasn't even been stimulating enough to really make me even tired. The only fatigue I'm feeling is from the resentment that I'm feeling all the time. And then there was a moment where I remembered this. And I thought to myself, I can see this situation this way for the next 33 months and be miserable and really perform poorly and have a whole group of hundreds of these young people have a miserable experience because I'm miserable. Or I can change the way I see this, and I can radically affect their lives. It's all up to the way I see it. And that is up to the way I speak about it to me. And as I begin to speak in future-based language and begin to look at what was really being impacted here, I begin to realize that I wasn't supervising 200 teenagers. I was really impacting 200 lives that would go on to impact hundreds and maybe thousands of other lives. That would become husbands and wives and fathers and mothers, that would raise children and grandchildren. And that I had this unique opportunity to be highly influential with them for a couple of years each, to meet with them every few weeks, to work with them and teach them and train them. They're so willing to learn. And the moment that occurrence changed for me, everything changed for me. And it changed for them. On Saturday, we're going to have a little reunion, and there will be a couple of hundred of them. They'll be up here at the ranch, and we'll spend some time getting hearing about their school and their jobs and those that have gotten married and so forth. And it's so thrilling for me to realize that at least for that last 33 months, I focused on seeing it the way that would bring about the highest level of performance. And as a result, the mission's success went from one of the worst missions in the world to one of the top 5 missions in the world out of 450 missions. Just like that. Same people, same location, same everything. The only thing that changed was the way I saw it. And that was fortified by language. Now let's put this into your situation, into your world. Each of you are confronting your own problems and challenges. Some of them are staggeringly difficult. I don't know this personally, but I know enough about human beings that if you talk to 100 people, 50 or 60 of them are struggling with some really big problem at that point in their life. That's just the way life is. So I know some of you got some very big challenges, but you have to look at your challenge and say, is it a challenge or is it a school? Is it a problem or is it an exercise? Is it a rejection? Or is it an opportunity for refinement? As I look at my own situation, I begin to realize that in the moment of the changing of the way I saw it, I begin to immediately see opportunities. Marcus Aurelius, the great philosopher, emperor of Rome, said that whatever stands in the way becomes the way. And as we think about that, we realize that the obstacle is, in fact, the way we become stronger, smarter, better, more skillful. Without the obstacle in our life, without the problems, without the challenges, how would we learn? How would we grow? How would we become stronger? But if we sit in our problems, resenting them, being angry about them or irritated that things don't go the way we want them to go, we never grow. We never become stronger. We never become capable of overcoming the next set of challenges. And we stay swamped at a certain level, never rising above it. So I would suggest for your consideration, and I know we're limited on time here, But I would suggest for your consideration to think carefully about these three laws. Number one, how your performance correlates with how something occurs to you. How something occurs to you comes from your language about that something, or someone else's language that you have bought into about that something. You can change the way something occurs to you by changing your language, by changing the way you see it, and beginning to describe it in a future-based way to how it's going to become for you a stepping stone to a better you, to a stronger you, to a more self-reliant you. Sir Ernest Shackleton, a personal hero of mine, was an adventurer. He was a British fellow who decided that he would try to be one of the first people to do something really magnificent. He would go and get to the South Pole before anyone else did. He had about 100 men who joined him on this expedition. Unfortunately, the expedition did not turn out to be successful, and the ship was caught in an early freeze in those treacherous waters. The story is found in the book called Endurance. You might find it, if you haven't already read it, you might find it to be a powerful thing for you to read. It's a true story. But ultimately, they didn't reach the South Pole. But through a series of astonishing feats of endurance, discipline, courage, and simply not being willing to quit or to die, Shackleton brought every single man home alive. When he was later asked about these problems, he said, "Obstacles are simply things you overcome." As you begin to take on that kind of a mindset, your world begins to change. You see them coming at you and you embrace them, those problems that are really your schoolmaster, those problems that are really your tutor, those problems that are really your ladder to success. We say we want success, we dream of it, we set goals for it, we pray for it, and then when the problems that will actually refine us and educate us and make us capable of getting the success we want, when they come to us, we resent them. And so we don't get the benefit of them. But if we change the way we see it, if we embrace them and say, all right, I got a challenge here. This is not what I expected. How do I use this to become what I need to become to get what I really want to have? 3 laws, all boiled down into one concept. How you see it determines how you will perform. How you see it is determined by you. Don't give that to somebody else, not even to the squeaky voice inside of you. You assert your will, you assert your power, you assert your agency, and take control of yourself. Rule your mind, Horace said over 2,000 years ago, or it will rule you. As you begin to rule your mind, and you begin to direct yourself, and you begin to choose your language, so that you can see it the way it needs to be seen, so that you can become the person you have the potential to become, everything is going to get better in your lives. I'm excited to be back with you. I'm excited to be working with you. God bless you all. I'll turn it back over to Clayton. I've gone over on time. I apologize for that. But I'm excited to be back working with you, and I look forward to meeting you all personally in the days and months ahead.